Well, I don't hear you, Fredo. Let's see if we can do maybe do without the earphones. I don't know if you can hear me.
No earphones for you.
There you go.
No
I can
earphones
hear
for
you.
you. Now you can hear it. Yeah. Is it backwards?
Yeah. PaulE Drum Cajone. How
Good
you doing,
evening. Good
Fredo?
morning.
Yeah. Good morning to you. Good evening for me.
Yeah.
You doing well?
Doing good, brother.
Right on. It seemed like you guys had a good showing out there in East LA. There was that the east part. I know that was pretty close to home. Your weekend
Yeah, a little
shows.
near the San Gabriel Mountains, Glendora.
Lovely,
Glendora and Aliso
lovely.
Viejo, that was further south, kind of Laguna Beach area, Laguna Niguel. Never been, first time.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, I say I've been all over Los Angeles. I've got a lot of friends that are out there, and uh, when I when I lived in Albuquerque, I used to drive out there frequently, and it was a nice little 11-hour road trip to see
Right?
friends. Yeah, but you're used to traveling, I'm sure, it's on the road, so 11 hours is like, it's not too much. One bathroom stop.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Right
Right
on.
on.
Well, everybody who's joined in, Paulie, Fredo Ortiz, this is We Go to 11, the Paulie Drums, I guess you call it video chat, live story. And my guest today, as I said, is Fredo, currently playing with Los Lobos, played with Beastie Boys, plays gigs with all kinds of different bands, Japanese drumming, Latin drumming. He does it all. So welcome.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me, Paul.
Cheers. So we'll get off with our 11 questions. Those of you who've watched the show before know we go to 11 means more than we just go to 11. It means we have 11 questions. And the first is usually always the same. And that's, Fredo, where were you born? And was your family into music and your childhood? Was it a childhood filled with music?
Born in Paramount, California. Raised in Gardena, California. Went to school in Pico Rivera, California. Hung out in Compton, California with my grandma. And Dad was always playing records on the turntable. There was a piano. There was an acoustic guitar. My uncle Gaston played saxophone in the army band. My other uncle Carlos played trumpet and had a little stint with Pérez Prado in his day.
Mm.
And my mom's first son, Glenn Pompa, rest in peace, he was a Hammond organ player. And that was pretty much my first exposure to live music, was kind of going to see him play at a wedding somewhere. And I think I remember distinctly one time sitting behind the drummer. I don't think I knew what it meant, but it looked cool.
There you go. And it does look cool.
Right?
Right on. So then your influences, obviously you had some family influences and inspiration from that. Uh, what outside your family did other inspired things inspired you and influenced you to become a drummer?
I mean, outside, not too much outside. I mean, I went to some shows with my parents, but what's the pretty crazy thing is that the full circle for me is that I grew up with Los Lobos music in my house before I even met them. That green record was on the turntable all the time, and every record on after that. So my dad was a big fan. Little did I know that he worked with them at some point, hiring them for fundraisers and stuff, which I learned later. But I ended up going to high school with one of the sons. But through my dad, I mean, every musical genre was being played, you know, from mariachi to salsa to Pete Townsend to the Beatles to Los Lobos to, you know, it was all over the place. You know, even some blues and, you know, this the whole spectrum. So that influence was already there. I think I was toting around that little acoustic guitar around the house and acting like I was playing, you know, Zoot Suit, which was a play that turned into a movie. Had a soundtrack, and I don't know, I gravitated to that video when I was a kid and put the VHS tape in and would act like I was in the play. And then, but the songs popped out to me, right? You know, so the songs were really well done and you could sing along. And I would act it out in front of the mirror, you know, when I was like 6 or 7, you know, so definitely those were strong influences. As far as drumming is concerned, wow, like can't even remember. I know that when I took my first guitar lesson that my mom signed me up for, when the teacher would leave the room, I gravitated to the Remo pad that was in the corner and started jamming on that. And the teacher would come in. He's like, no, get back on the guitar, man. He's here. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Go for it. I'm just like, nah, I want to play drums. You know, but I hadn't really been paying attention to like drummer influences, you know, probably not till I started getting music from my friends in like 5th or 6th grade. You know, somebody gave me a Suicidal Tendencies tape, The Cure, you know, and kind of listening to that, and Guns N' Roses. I think, you know, that was when I first got my real Pearl export kit. That was GNR Lives was a tape that I played along to. I had no cymbals. It was all toms and snare and kick. But I jammed along to, you know, so that, you know, that rock was a big influence, you know.
Right on. Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm looking right now at a Pro kit that somebody is selling. That's you know, online, and if I have any room, maybe I'd get it. But I don't know. I said, well, where we're living right now is it's pretty much filled with drums, and you know.
Same here.
I've got it. Yep, I see that. You've got drum horns on your head. You've got 2 snare horns there. That's brilliant. Yeah. Holy. Yeah. So then your first gig then, yeah, when did you make your switch from guitar? Was guitar your first gig?
Grade where, you know, they introduced, you know, if anybody wants to take a music class when music was being taught in schools, you know, whoever signed up, you know, I wanted to do the drums, so they brought the Remo pads for all the kids. You know, I had to buy one later on. You know, my mom bought me one at Downey Music in the city of Downey, and I just started my lefts and rights, you know, and then by I think 4th and 5th grade, I joined the concert band, you know, so those were kind of my first gigs, you know, or exposure to that. But no, first real gig I would say was with the Villains, which was Louis Pettis's son, Louis the Third. I joined we hooked up in high school. We went to the same high school, and we did the talent show. And he wanted to do like a Rolling Stone, but the Hendrix version. And I hadn't heard it, you know, so I was learning it, and I had only played at home, so this was kind of the first time of taking my drum set out of my house and putting it on a stage. And I think my toms were all weirdly sticking out like that. And I went to the music store and bought these sticks, and now I realize they were like marching band sticks, but I bought these sticks that were really long. They were called JoJo's, and they had a big nylon tip ball at the top. But I played it, man, and you know, we did our gig. We didn't win, you know, but that was like my first time on a stage, setting up my stuff and looking out into an audience. But officially was with the Villains, with what ended up being the Villains in that band and other members. We played the Natural Fudge Cafe in Hollywood somewhere, and I saved the clip that came out in the LA Weekly because it was like, oh man, we're in the newspaper, man. We made it.
Oh, that's great, man. That's great. Yeah, Louis, for those of you that might not know, Louis is the drummer, the original drummer in Los Lobos. Now he's a multi-percussion player, instrumentalist.
Harana, guitar, vocals, all around, man.
I just saw, what was it, the Crossroads in 2019. And he had a big Gresh hollow body, and he played a ripping lead. I think yeah, so it's like, the guy's got great talent. Big love for Louis. Louis the first Los Lobos I met. My friend, you might even know him. His name is Jeff Cacchio, JC. He introduced me to Louis, and they were coming to Albuquerque, and I was like, hey, how about you let me know if I can get backstage, and as you know, you're with Los Lobos, so I had a great group of guys, and they're always willing to say hello, and that was a great time. They were playing with Los Lonely Boys at the time. So that was a great gig where they each played a set and even joined on. That was my first time meeting them. I went backstage. I gave Louis a drum, and then later I made him and Dave were doing the Latin Playboys, and I made them a stomp box. And yeah, then you were saying that you were at fundraising gigs. That was it your uncle that did fundraisers?
My dad was working with the city and police departments, and was starting gang diversion programs around town. And I think he probably put a fundraiser together at what I remember him saying at Cal State LA, and he hired the Lobos for it. But the first time that LP3 invited me backstage, we went to the show in Greek Theater, and it was my first time in a backstage and seeing it from behind, right? Not seeing it. I was used to seeing it from the front, and they actually invited all the kids. We were like 16 then, 15, 16. So we all, we went up for probably La Bamba or something like that, and I got to jam out on a conga. And after the show was done, we went, backstage at the Greek, and then I saw my dad talking to them, and they were chopping it up like if they'd known each other for a long time. So I'm like, oh, they have some history, So this connection, just from my dad being kind of connected to it, and then now I'm connected with, the younger generation and joining the band and just kind of becoming part of the clique, part of that family.
There you go. I mean, that can lead us into the next question. I was going to say, how did you meet Los Lobos and get that gig? But I think you already nailed a bunch of that. But I know Enrique Bugs Gonzalez was their drummer when I saw them the first time.
Yeah.
And, when the COVID pandemic came around, I know that he stopped being in the band, and they stopped doing gigs, and he moved back to Mexico. So, and then that's where you come in. So
I reconnected with them in January of 2020, where I was on tour with a band called Rough Church. Oh no, we were doing it was called Man's Body. Sorry, and my friend Greg Franco and band. We went up to Seattle and some other states, and I was walking downtown with our violinist Caitlin, and we ran into Caesar and his daughters Vicky and Ruby, and I'm like, and we all have masks on, but I can recognize them right away. I'm like, hey, what are you guys doing? And so we went to the show. They were playing at the Triple Door, and of course it's like I'm there. I see the family. I see Dave and everybody, and I'm standing on the side, and we look over and like, Fredo, get on stage, So I jumped on stage, which kind of a normal thing to sit in, and go on and jam some congas, and that kind of rekindled our relationship, because wow, it's been so many years, like, since I played with LP3, and, done music since we were like, you know, we were around each other like every day, you know, to the point where we had to become adults. And I was always on tour, you know, I was always away. So I was kind of detached from home in LA, you know. So to kind of reunite with the Lobos that night, and that just kind of sparked the relationship again, you know. And it was before, you know, the pandemic. I mean, the pandemic was in effect, but you know, I don't know if decisions were being made or what Bugs was feeling, you know. But I got to perform with Bugs, you know. Marco, that play percussionist with War, was playing percussion that night in Seattle, and then I sat in, and then it was like, I think it was one of our first times that I got to play with Bugs, you know, and Bugs was like super stoked, and we're like, dude, we're gonna do this, you know, Bugs on drums, Fredo on percussion, like it was awesome, you know, it was a great feeling. So you know, I did expect that change to happen, you know, and when it did, you know, it's like I had other response. I was playing with for the past 6 years. Been playing with the band called Gogo Bordello. So and then we were on pause too because of the pandemic. So you know, just came down to, you know, I think everybody was in survival mode and trying to find the next thing, you know. And I knew that, you know, Gogo was about to start working, but Lobos were, you know, after that year passed, you know, and 2021 came around, you know, and they're like, hey, we need your help, you know, come sit in for a few and bring your cajon. Oh no, wait, don't bring your cajon. Bring your drums. I was like, oh shit, okay. When I hear bring your drums, it's like, oh, I got to sit down and I got to put some work in, you know.
Yeah,
So,
it's
so that was 2021, no 2020, and then 2021 passed, and then here we are this year. You know, March of 2021, they started doing live streams, and then the end of July just started working. So I had to make, you know, I had to make a decision, you know, of what was happening, and you know, the seat was open, and I was more than happy and willing. You know, I think one of your later questions is like, what's your dream gig? You know, I guess I'm doing it, man. It's, you know, all the bands that I've been a part of in LA that have all the styles from punk rock to ska to cumbia to whatever, salsa, you know, it's like every band that I was with kind of like absorbed that because LA, I don't know, it's just that melting pot, right? And we kind of try to make a new sound, and there was a band called Ozo Motley that did that, band called Yeska that I was a part of that did that, and pretty much our influences were Los Lobos and everybody else that was around LA and doing that style. So it's like now they have all those styles, and I still get to explore and play those styles with them, you know, whether it be a rock groove or, you know, soft bolero or whatever, you know, it's like,
yeah.
it's
I
all
gotta say,
there.
to me, that Los Lobos is one of the great American bands, and you know the Rock and Roll Hall of Shame that they're not in there, and you think of some of the people that are. It's like, I mean, but they're doing it 50 years.
Yeah.
They're coming on. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just you know that alone. But like you said, the variety of music that melts and oozes from Los Lobos. You know, if you go to a Los Lobos show, I mean, you get everything. You know, you get they run the spectrum of music. They have the hard, they have the sweet and soft, and
Yeah.
the heavy Latin. It just really, I say that how that they deserve a lot more respect.
For
You
sure.
now that deserve a lot more respect, I think, than they get. The great longevity of that band is just uh, uh, you know
Yeah.
inspiring. So
Yeah. And then
before then,
going back to Bugs, like I remember when he joined, and I knew him from another, you know, section of music. He was working with a band from Mexico called Jumbo, you know, and he was friends with some of my other friends, Eva Gardner, she's a bass player, you know, and she knew all those cats. It kind of like, you know, in these circles, man, you're just always swimming in and out, you know, and as much as I started doing, or like, you know, when people started asking me to play for their band, or, you know, I didn't know, I thought, you know, you're supposed to be with one band, you know, it was going to be the villains till we die, right? You know, and we're going to be on the road and we're going to do everything together. And little do you know that eventually, you know, you got to figure out your path, you know. And my path, you know, the Beastie Boys came along and that whole thing, you know, so I couldn't control it. I had to go with the flow, you know.
That's the way it is. I mean, that was going to be my next question. Was the Beastie Boys? How'd you run into that gig? By luck or by
That was
friend?
meeting Money Mark in the winter of '95. And I was playing a gig with the Villains at the Nova Express Cafe across from Cantor's Deli. And we had finished playing, and I was walking out with my drums, putting them away in the car so we can go have a beer in the back of the trunk. And Money Mark was like, "Hey, let me help you with your bass drum." I'm like, "Oh, no, it's cool, man. I got it." But I didn't know who he was at the time. And little did I know, I just saw him play at the Lollapalooza in '95 at the Velodrome here in Carson. But he said, he chatted me up, and somebody had recommended to him, "Oh, you're looking for a percussionist," because Eric percussionist had left, Eric Bobo. And so they're like, "Talk to that kid," and I was 19, 20, and playing gigs, and that was I guess my experience with networking, and networking with somebody who had a big gig in his pocket, and he had me play a show with his solo project, Money Mark solo project. And we played downtown at a friend's loft called 50 Bucks. And he invited Mike D and MCA, and they came out, checked me out. And I wanted to play drums. I was always selling the fact that I can play kit, but I was also playing percussion in some other bands. So everybody's like, "Oh, that's the timbalero, that's the conguero." And I was learning. I was still, green to all of that. I knew more licks on drums than I did on percussion, but naturally I gravitated to it where people were like, "Oh, he sounds good, get him." So that's how that sparked. So I played the gig with Money Mark that night at 50 Bucks, met Mike D, met MCA, called all my friends. I'm like, "Dude, Beastie Boys are going to be here." And they're mad cool. They said, "Sounds good up there, man. We want to work together. We'll give you a shout." A week later, I was invited to G-Sun, which was their studio here in Atwater Village, and where they recorded Check Your Head, Ill Communication, The In Sounds from the Way Out, like all that, all that. And I was a fan, I was paying attention to that music. I was paying attention to their style. I was paying attention to the lyrics, I was like, with the bands that I get to play with, like they're all dream gigs, because it's like they had influenced me, and I'm listening to their music. But that's how it happened. That's they called me in. I did my job. I did what I knew I could on the drums, and they're like, "Cool, sounds good. We leave to Australia like in about a week or two. Do you have a passport?" And I was like, "What's a passport?"
And you got one quick.
And they're like, "Oh, you got to drive to the federal building, and we got to expedite you passport." And off I went to Australia, and played a festival with a lot of rock bands from the U.S. that also influenced me and that I was a fan of, like Beck, Foo Fighters, Sonic Youth, Rancid, Jawbreaker, Bikini Kill, The Amps, like all these bands that I'm just in my little iPod, there they are live in front of me, and then I get to play with the headlining band. So that's another mind trip, I'm still a fan walking around backstage going like, "Oh, I got to get ready for my show." Like,
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's a great story.
I was literally thrown in the pool to swim, man, and I had to learn quick.
And you done well, man. You done well.
Thanks.
So speaking of drums, I know that Pearl's a sponsor of yours.
Yeah.
What else do you have in your kit? What's your favorite?
That's like growing up and playing in marching band, and there's a lot of companies that are kind of in your face all the time, and always Zildjian cymbals and Remo drum heads, and I got to connect with them, meeting them through Beastie Boys, through our friend Amory, who connected me with the companies. But I didn't really pay attention to endorsements till later on, probably till like 2005. I started touring with a band called Morningwood from New York, and we started doing television, and we did Letterman like 4 times, and we were touring. I was like, "Oh, I should really look into this endorsement thing." So all the people that I had met, I reached out to, and they're like, "Of course, dude, come on in, man. It's family." So I've been using Zildjian cymbals Remo drum heads, Vic for sticks, you know, and then all small mom and pop companies. I think Hendrix Drums makes these plastic sleeve washers. You know, they hooked me up with some of those. Canopus accessories, Canopus drums from Japan. You know, I use their snares and some of they have leather washers that they use as well. I had drum cases. I use SKB drum cases for hard cases. Tascam, you know, as long as I've been using a little, you know, 8-track, 4-track recorder, you know, and lately we've been working together, and they did a press release on me using one of their mixers that they came out with, Model 12. I use it on stage to record and also to just kind of reference and have a little mix of my own up there on stage. And other drum things. Yeah, and PaulE pretty much has both worlds of percussion and drums, you know, so I have congas, timbales, all the bells and all the knickknacks, man, for studio sessions. And, you know, that's another other part of this, my musical path and spectrum is just like now doing stuff in studio. It's a whole other game plan, and you got to be prepared for it. I remember going into like, do you have any other tambourines? I'm like, nope, it's the only one I got. You know, and now I have over 20 tambourines, including yours.
There you go.
Seriously.
Well, that was what I was going to go. There you go. The mommy. How do you like the mommy?
They're great. I mean, for everything, you know, for me, like every instrument has its own character, right? So it's like, you know, you can play. What do we have? This is the mommy, right?
Yeah.
There we go. I don't know how it sounds over the phones. It's good.
Yeah,
they're all
I
great.
put the
And
really.
I've been using listen, I got the Mooney.
Yeah. Yep, the
I have
Bonnie
that
Mooney.
on my hat. And what's the round one that I have that I take on
That's
the road?
the standard Bonnie.
The Bonnie.
So all my hi-hat things are from the Bonnie name after John Bonham. And of course the Mooney is shaped like a half moon, but of course another favorite drummer of mine is Keith Moon. So,
right.
you know, birds with stones, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, right.
So I like to name my drums in a tribute to someone. Like obviously the mommy is named after my mother, who passed away about a year or so ago. And my cousin Jean Ann, she was like, well, you know, you need to make a drum for your mom now, you know. And I'm like, oh, geez, I really do. And I was in North Carolina working on drums, and I got some Purple Heart wood and using them for some of the things, you know, like a Bonnie. It's a real heavy wood, so it's difficult on your, you know, on the hi-hat. Yeah,
It's a beautiful color, man.
purple. Yeah, that's such a lovely wood, but very hard and very heavy.
Yeah.
So I mean, even like you know, you have the your Cajon too. I made one of those, and I tell you, it felt like you were holding a bass drum in your hand. You know, it was.
You use like several different woods, right?
Yeah. I like to stick with the American hardwoods for the most part. Cedar.
Sorry, having a moment.
No, there you go. I mean, I think what one that you have is cedar and poplar and black walnut and maple, isn't it?
All three right there.
There you go. Brilliant. Is that basswood? That might even be as well. Yeah. No, my favorite wood to work with really is the cedar. It's just it gives such a beautiful look, especially like when you have the ones like you have, where I line up so everything matches, because I do stave construction. So in order to get things to line up, it's not like when you're doing a wrap, you know, and it lines up. And most stave people do like this. So I do my stave like that, so that it, you know, just a little something that just the way
Sure.
I do it. I do things a bit differently, as you can see with my stuff. There's not, you don't really see my stuff around anywhere except by people that know me. Um, but yeah, I've really been blessed myself with the drums and
Well,
you know, and the people
they've been
I
traveling with me, man. So they're they're getting used, man. They're a part of the equation for sure.
right on. So I do want to go to the dream gig. So we'll put
Yeah.
on another spin on it. A dream gig that could never have happened because they're no longer with us. Like someone from the '60s who, you know, if you could have
Wow.
played. I know I'm dating myself here, but you know, I
Man,
think almost all of us, man. I couldn't imagine being Ringo, but boy, that would be what a dream gig that would be.
yeah. And I always freeze on these type of questions. Like, oh, who would it be? You know, it's like I think I've just taken everything at face value and the experience, and never thought, like, what would I have done? You know, because before playing music, I didn't think about playing music, or you know, I'd watch it on TV. But man, I don't know. I don't know.
It
There's just
is.
there's so much that I like, so much that's out there. I mean, I want to say Santana because you know, he's always had a big band, you know, and it's always included all rock and you know all the
Yeah.
melting pot of everything, right? You know, and to see percussion
What
on
about?
there and congas, and I think seeing that growing up too, you know, it just made me curious, you know. But that would be a dream gig, you know.
There you go. Yeah, I mean the Woodstock Santana, you know that, you know, memorable performance. Michael Street, just really a great, you know, a great live thing, just absolutely mind blowing. And that would be a dream gig for me too. I would be any one of the positions in Santana would be an absolute dream. You know, it's just an absolute legend. And
Yeah,
again, he's still playing now as well. You know, I mean,
yeah,
boy, I mean that's 69. That's, you know, let's not even say how old or how long Carlos has been doing it. But that would be definitely be a dream gig. I think
for sure.
we could both be in there. Um, but yeah, it says that was my last question that I had on my 10. So see if you had anything you'd like to ask me or something, if you could put me on the spot.
What was the moment that your light bulb lit up to say, you know what, I want to make drums out of wood?
Well, this is a good story. Okay, so I had just moved out to New Mexico, and my grandmother had passed away, and I got some money from that, and I went out there. And I was at the time I was a golf club maker. I made custom golf clubs. But I wanted to get back into woodworking because I'd always been a woodworker, and I had jobs building houses when I was a teenager. So I bought these tools, and I met some people at a party, and they said this guy Steve is a drum maker, and you know when you should check him out, see if you can make a drum. And I was like, no, that's, you know, what are you kidding me? Sure, let's do this. And Steve was uh, he looked like Jesus with a lot of teeth missing. All right, and he made drums out of recycled wood. So we went down and we bought a pallet, or I bought some Purple Heart wood, and we took the pallet. We said we want the pallet and some Purple Heart, and I made this drum out of Purple Heart, my first drum, and he made his out of pallet wood. And he literally looked me in the eye because my drum was, you know, he's like, this is the first time you've made a drum. And I was like, yeah. I said, but, you know, I'm a woodworker, so, you know, it's woodworking, and you showed me, you know, your style of how to do it. So, and he looked me straight in the eye and he said, you need to be a drum maker. And I remember looking at my friend at the time, and I was like, yeah, all right, I'm in.
Yeah,
And I started off of his, let me see, I can take you a picture here. This
Let
is
me
one
ask
of
you,
my first,
did you have any musical experience before that?
as far as drumming.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, boy, to get into a story, you know, you had your pad. I remember my father made my first drum pad, and it was the springiest pad you could imagine. You know, and it was really different than what you have nowadays. And I started playing, you know, practicing and doing stuff. And my drum teacher was said, "Can you sing?" And I, you know, I've always could sing. I did plays, and I mean, even in church, it's like my favorite thing about going to church was singing. You know, it's like, oh, I can sing here, you know, and sing my heart out. Um, and what was the song we did? We did Iron Maiden, "Running Free," and
Nice.
I ripped out "Running Free," you know, and pulled it around the bottle top, whiskey dancing. And after it, he was like, "Hey, would you like to sing in our band?" And I was like, "Are you
Oh,
kidding
wow.
me?" And he's like, "Well, you know, it's a lot easier gig. You know, you don't need to have drums." And at this time, I was, you know, I was learning drums. You know, I guess I was 16, and you know, and that's what I started singing in his band. And I soon realized that, you know, when you're a kid, things are, you know, you get a lot more if you're the singer than if you're the drummer, so to speak. So I did that with his band, and then I joined a Doors cover band because at the time I had long hair and I looked pretty much like Jim Morrison, and I have that "Riders on the Storm." So I had that kind of bit to me.
I'll say, yeah,
Uh, but
you were in it, man. You were, you know, that's cool.
Yeah. But yeah, so I was always into it. My older brother Alan was a guitar player, still is. You know, and music, like you said, I mean, my older brother is 5 years older than me. Geez, I need to say how old I am. And so he had all the great records. You know, he was my where I got to listen to my records, and then my other brother was 3 years older than him. So when you know, I had a lot to listen to, and it was all new. You know, it was new stuff that was going on as well as the old stuff. And by the time I got old enough to buy records, you know, I sort of would fill in what they didn't have because by this time they had a lot. So the first album I bought was Scorpions' Tokyo Tapes, which is the live
Mm,
Scorpions album from
yeah.
Tokyo, obviously. And then you know it was just like we had our records and we weren't together, but it was just sort of like filling things out. And so for me, I started with a lot of different music. Where my first album of a band probably wouldn't be what somebody else's first album from that band would be, because my brothers already had it.
Right,
Um,
right. Sure.
so yeah, so I
The
mean,
hand
I
me down,
always
but
grew
that's
up.
cool, man.
Yeah,
You
but
had all that influence, absorbing
yeah,
all that. I wanted to ask you regarding like just drums. I mean, all drums are made out of wood, you know, traditionally, and you know, but like you mentioned earlier, like I play in a group called East LA Taiko with my friend Maceo Hernandez here in LA, and he at a young age went to Japan when he was a teen and learned the drum and learned, you know, everything about it, you know, trained, played. That's he ate and breathed taiko, right? You know, a traditional taiko is made out of a tree trunk but hollowed out. Have you had any experience with doing something like that out of a solid piece of wood, like kind of hollowing that
actually,
out and making it? Oh yeah, you showed me that first drum, right? The,
well, yeah, I mean, this is the. I mean, if you look at all my drums that I have over here, this one has the skin head.
yeah.
Okay, and that drum there is probably 20 some years old, and that's the original head.
Wow.
But it's also made out of maple. So when I came up, you asked about the wood head. when I started trying to come up with the wood head, it was because I was doing drum art shows, and I went to an art show in Phoenix, and I went inside to sign up, and when I came back out, like maybe 5 minutes later, all the drums heads had cracked because it was so hot in Phoenix. And that really ticked me off. So I basically had these drums. I had to take the wrappings off, the tensioners, and, it's like, here I have drum shells, and that I was like, all right, I need to do something with the wood head. And I started with pieces of wood the same width as, what I was working with, and started sanding them down. And I was sanding them down, and, they would always, since it's one layer, they'd always crack when you got them to a certain bit. When it got a certain thinness, it was going to crack. Right. And, of course, cajones are, the plywood. And I was just like, what? I should just try plywood. This would have been 98. And I got some plywood. I got some Baltic birch plywood, 1/8 inch, 1/16 of an inch. And just glued it on to see how it worked. And the 1/8 of an inch just sounded really good and consistent. And no matter what the weather was like, it always stayed in tune, whatever tune it was. It wasn't like you could tune it. It's what you got is what you had. And I have here it is. It's right next to me. This right here is called the Eddie. Okay, it's an E in a note. Okay. And I gave one to Terry Bozzio when this 2001 or 2 or 3, something like that. And he took it and laid it on its side, and in his original Monster kit is that drum, and that was his E. And he had, A, B, C, D, E, right. He had every note in his kit, which, is amazing.
They had it set up at the DW headquarters. Yeah, that whole thing, man.
And now it's all DW, right? So that was when he was making it, that's when it was really a Frankenstein. And I had 2 drums that were in that kit. My Eddie, and then a tambourine that he would hit with a pedal. And everything else was DW and Sabian. And I remember my friend coming up to me with Drummer Magazine, and he says, "Hey, PaulE, isn't that your drum in Bozzio's new kit?" And there was the picture of Terry like this standing in front of this kit. And, needless to say, I sort of jumped around, oh my God, that's so great. And, Terry's an absolutely brilliant guy, friendly, plays drums not many people play drums or try to play drums the way Terry does, especially nowadays. His orchestral music is just, mind blowing. So I've given Terry a lot of different drums. I know all those DW guys there, and that factory. I remember I went to tour with John. John Good invited me, to come and come and take the tour. Yep. And I went in there, and of course we're seeing how everything is made in this, nice hour tour. And he's like, "I got something else to show you." And then we went in there, and there was Terry's original kit, Monster kit, where my thing was in, and then the new one that they were working on, which, again, it was like a Frankenstein. He was taking all these different pieces. He was building the rack by himself. John was doing all the drums. It's just, I can remember walking in. It's like, oh my God, I'm in heaven.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's basically how I got into making drums, and my drums and the wood head has really worked out for me. It's very versatile.
This one you did one open end, which I haven't put my piece of cardboard in there to.
Yeah.
Get to slap it,
Yep.
right? But it's solid, man. It feels good, and we got. Why the two jingles? Just two.
All right. So the two is because I wanted to sound very Cajon-y, with that slap sound.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to use a snare. I wanted it to be, the pendejo, tambourine, cajon, real hybrid. And the jingles there, the guy who helped me design it, Kevin Kinane from Albuquerque, what he'll do is he'll hold it and
Nice.
mute it and just really plays it incredibly. And those were back when I had these real jingly jingles, right? And then now I've got some really fine jingles. Like on my mommy, I still have that, ching ching ching.
Yeah.
But now I've got the brass,
These are good.
as well. Yeah, exactly. So that's the nickel, steel, and the brass.
These are different.
Yeah. Well, so you can see the difference there. The mommies are made, on a punch by machines, and the others, those are handmade here in the UK by a guy named Matt Nolan, and he makes primarily gongs and stuff like that. But a guy, an East Coast cymbal maker, Nicky Moon, makes really great, one hand, at a time cymbals. I asked him if he would make any jingles, and he said, no, try Matt Nolan. He might be able to do it. And Matt, makes some great stuff, and he handmade, he made a little punch, and he's handmade me a few dozen of each. But now I've also, what is it, Black Swamp Percussion out of Michigan. Have you heard of them?
Not yet. Now we do.
Well, they make some really high end tambourines, orchestra grade. And I met them at the PASIC back in November, Percussive Arts Society. And I asked them if they would be interested in selling individually to me, just the jingles, because, I really want to get a high end jingle because I like to think that my stuff is very unique, and I don't really want to just have some generic jingle on it. I really want something that is boutique, like I like to think my stuff is. And after about a month, they said, yeah, we'll do that for you. So I've just ordered my first batch from them, and I'll be getting them before the UK drum show, which is next month. No, next month. All right. So April 2nd and 3rd here in the UK in Liverpool. So now I'm going to offer all my cojones and my Moonies and Bonnies will all come with their jingles. And I've got bronze. I got some bronze, and I have an unheat treated stainless steel. And they sound really great. Like I said that their tambourines are, very top end. I'm just really happy that I was able, or that they were willing to deal with me, because obviously they have their products, but really nothing I do is exactly like what they do.
Right.
My stuff is all pretty unique. They don't do any hi-hat stuff. They're all pretty much tambourines, and my tambourines are the Cajon, and it's got a slap edge, and their tambourines are in bands, they're orchestral grade, really high end. But yeah, I would definitely suggest checking them out, Black Swamp. They're out of Michigan, so everything's, made in America. Really nice guys, really high end stuff too.
Nice.
Well, Fredo, man, I have to say it's been great chatting with you. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
I had the full beard last time you saw
You
me.
did.
So that,
Looking good,
Santa
man.
beard. Thanks. Yeah, Santa beard is gone, and now I'm just left a little like Louis inspiration at that gig, as Louis had the little. And I was like, yeah, I could do that. I just keep that. Yeah, you got fish. It's just always nice to have at least a little something on there uh, to distract from the rest of the picture. But man, again, it's great to talk to you. I wish you all the best. I thank you very much for, having my drums and, spreading the word
Yeah, man,
about PaulE
thank you for
drums.
providing, more colors to, the drum spectrum. It's like, I'm always looking for something, and it's funny, you'll find some odds and ends here and just in random places and thrift stores, and you'll find things. And but when you get something like your products, you can tell that there's, some hours put in there and some love, and the sound is there, and the delivery is there with everything you're making, man. So thank you for including me with all that, and happy to be using that on tour. And yeah, it's on the road with me, man. It's not going anywhere. So
Brilliant. Well, cheers to you, Fredo,
cheers, brother.
and
Salute.
and everything that you do. And thank you again for being the PaulE Player of the Month in February. So I've shared a lot of stuff about you, and I hope that a lot of people are following you now, and maybe now after this show they know a little bit more about you. I sure did.
Sure. Right on, brother.
All right, man. Aloha. Stay well and give
Aloha.
my best to the Lobos.
We will do, brother. Peace.
Peace.